This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, colleagues. My name is Kamal Chani. I'm from Cliniminds. I would like to welcome you all on this Sunday. First of all, wish everyone very safe and healthy quarantine period, lockdown period, and I hope you all are taking care of yourself, your families, and your friends to ensure that everyone remains healthy. Social distancing is a new norm, and going forward, I think it's going to be a long journey before the vaccine comes out. So wish everyone again well. I would like to welcome you to this demonstration session on aggregate report writing. And majority of you, I believe, are already from the pharmacovigilance domain, and you know the value of the aggregate reports. It's one of the most important regulatory document that every marketing authorization holder has to provide to the regulatory agency. It's a very high quality document which regulatory agencies seek from the pharmaceutical companies or the MAH, as we call it. It's a document which is the main advantage of this document is that it provides you the broad view of the safety profile of a drug. There are various kinds of aggregate reports we need to prepare, and these reports are depending upon the various regulatory agencies. They have their own formats. The duration of the submission of reports varies from agency to agency and what stage your drug is. I won't sort of go into the detail as we have a very esteemed speaker amongst us, Dr. Viket Dalal, who's been industry expert and several years of experience in aggregate report writing. I would like to invite Dr. Viket Dalal to make a presentation on what the aggregate report writing is and how does it, the career opportunities, right? What are the options? So Dr. Viket will speak on that. And at the end of the program, we would speak about this program. It's a 14-week sort of a program we're planning to launch from the end of the 10th of this month. So we'll talk about that a little later. First, go through the aggregate report writing presentation by Dr. Dalal. I hand over to you, Dr. Dalal. Now you can sort of go ahead. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Kamal. I think you have set up the stage nicely, and I see that some of the colleagues, or rather, there are a lot of colleagues in this particular presentation. Having said that, just a few ground rules. If you have any questions during the conversation or during the presentation, please put it in the chat window. Please stay muted all throughout the communication, all throughout the presentation, and I'll be sharing my contacts in case you have any other questions or maybe afterthoughts after the presentation, and you can pass it through Dr. Vipra. So with that said, let me just briefly introduce. My name is Dr. Viket Dalal, and I have roughly 15 odd years of experience. I am a PharmD, a Doctor of Pharmacy, and an MBA, and currently pursuing my PhD. So majority of my experience has been into pharmacovigilance, and predominantly of which is into aggregate reports. So with that said, let us kick off and see what aggregate reports are, to be honest. So well, we always have a perception that this aggregate reports are always, PSURs or PADers and all the other things. To an extent, this is true, but not entirely. So there is a lot of misconception around the pharmacovigilance medical writing, and it is solely concerned with the preparation of safety update periodic safety update reports. There is a PSVR in the post-marketing arena. But typically, it starts off the safety or the aggregate report. It starts off right from the clinical trials. And with that said, it is connected to nothing but, just a moment, my slide is stuck. All right, so let's understand some basic. So what does it concern to? It is concerned to you know, the safety, or to put it in a more umbrella term, it is more of a risk and a benefit analysis. That is more of an holistic approach. So you must be knowing this particular triangle, I think most of you, but those who don't, just a brief understanding that it typically starts from collecting the adverse events, and then it progresses upwards from periodic reporting until patient risk management. So the feeds, the little arrows that you see in the right, forms the feed for the subsequent stage. And even the adverse event case handling, that is the ICSRs that you say in common practice, that sets up a stage for signal detection. So now the signal detection solely is not through adverse case handling, it is through other mechanisms as well. And even the periodic reporting, which is the focus of discussion for today's meeting, plays an important role. And eventually it progresses to patient risk management, wherein how do we mitigate the risk? How do we ensure that the benefit are always higher than the risks? So with that said, with this background, what are the aggregate reports that we are looking at? These are nothing but the critical appraisal of the safety information, and they are periodic in nature and are comprehensive. When it comes to drug safety, it concerns the patient, it concerns the drugs, it concerns the event. The four criteria, as we all know, or rather most of us know. Just moving ahead, we look at why do we do it? What is the need? Is if everything is available, and if we can do via adverse case handling, and even if you say that, because you are saying that adverse event handling, it is setting up the stage for signal detection, then why do you need periodic reporting? So the main aims are, of course, the balance, benefit and risk assessment. It is also required for any authorizations or renewals in new marketplace, for new indication, so on and so forth, and relate it with the safety evaluation with exposure. Now this exposure is pretty, is pretty realistic. If you see the current scenario, what are we looking at? The cases that are doubling in some days. I mean to say the COVID cases are doubling in some days. So what is that? That is the prevalence or the disease incidence. Likewise, the drug, when it is exposed, if the patients are exposed to a drug in a particular market, and what is the risk and the benefit analysis. So all those items that has been seen with respect to the exposure. Of course, identifying new safety concerns. We don't want too many safety concerns. At the same time, it's inevitable that we will avoid it. It's always there, and you just can't get away with it. But the idea is to always keep them, under some sort of limit, so that benefits are always higher. In case they are, if the risks are more, there are mitigations which are well documented in the RMP. We'll touch base on that as well as we progress. But we need to identify the new safety concerns. So this activity can also be done. It's a activity of signal detection. However, it can also be done via the periodic reporting. So there have been instances. I would not like to go further into it, but this is something which is really important as well, which sets up the stage for changes to the RSI, that is the reference safety information. When we say reference safety information, it could be your company code data sheet, or the SMPC, summary of product characteristics is what I mean, or the PI, the patient, the prescribing information. So all these items, whom do we report to? If once we have the report in place, whom do we report to? Who sets up the guideline? Who says that, Vikit, you need to prepare a report in this way? So these are the regulations through which the report, which governs the pharmacovigilance, and of course, aggregate report falls under that umbrella. So with that said, which are the reports is what we are looking at. Because I understood the concept, and now you are looking at the aggregate reports. What are these types of aggregate reports? So as I said, these are mainly preclinical as well as post-clinical, or the post-approval as well. So it is pre-approval reports is what we'll touch base first. Mainly the DSUR. May I request someone to mute all, please? Thank you. So as we continue, the pre-approval reports, the DSUR, or the developmental safety update reports. So these form a basic or the fundamental milestone when it comes to reporting the safety into a clinical trial, and they also form a part of your approval. So when there is a CTA submission, there is a DSUR which goes in on a after 60 days and submitted at a frequency of 1 year, along with the CTD module. When we go for the MAA submission, that is marketing authorization approval submission, the CTD modules, as we all know, the triangle which we say, and so DSUR forms a part of the CTD module, and even the integrated summary of safety, risk management plan, risk benefit analysis, all these items, they form a part of your approval process. And integrated summary of safety, for example, it is more of a US specific report. So I will not go much detail into that, considering the scope of this presentation. And our focus with respect to pre-approval report will be dedicated towards the DSUR. You will say, Vikit, what is this / annual safety reports? So now this annual safety reports, or the ASR, which always concern the SAR, that is serious adverse reactions. Now this particular report was, as the name suggests, used to be submitted annually, and this is just like the DSUR, which is now being discontinued in EU. There are some of the regulatories who still ask for it, but predominantly it is now extinct. When we talk about post-approval reports, the most exciting part, and people, they always want to look at it. What are post-approval reports? We want to learn the PSURs, we want to learn the PBRER, we want to learn what the PADER is, and of course, there are always talk of the town, like some of the reports like addendum reports, summary bridging reports, ad hoc reports, and of course the risk management plan in the RBA, or the risk benefit analysis. They always are always kept on an update mode, and they are always kept updated, even though there is a approval in place, or the NDA submission is place, or MAA approval is in place. So these are mainly the post-approval reports, is what I wanted to just present, or just a snapshot is what we are looking at. Just like pre-approval reports, DSUR is in the focus. the post-approval reports, the PSURs, the PBRER, and the periodic adverse drug experience report, which is the PADER, is something we will look into, and that too very briefly. So here is the notes, is what I was trying to say. All right, before going ahead, let's go ahead. What are the key terminologies? You know, there are a vast variety of terminologies, a vast you know, a lot of terminologies that I use, which are industry specific, which are sponsor specific, which are more of regulatory authority specific as well. But the fundamentals is something which are these. So the DIBD, more to relate with the DSUR, which is the date of authorization obtained to conduct the first clinical trial in any country. IBD, I think you most will be aware about this, the date of first marketing authorization, whereas the EU birth date is the date of first authorization in the Europe. So there is a list of schedule for EU, which is available on the EMEA website, and of course the data lock point, which is the end date, which stops at the review period. When I say stops the review period, means if I have to say that a review period for a particular DSUR is 1st of January 2019 until 31st of December 2019. So when I say 31st of December 2019, that is the DLP. And of course, the reference safety information, which is a document which contains the cumulative list of all the adverse events that are observed. When we say all the adverse events that are observed, it also encompasses the signals or the risks. So the identified risks, say they go into the adverse events, the potential risks, they go into the precautions and warnings. So the section 6, as you are aware. Well, going to the report type. So the 4 dominant report types is something that are listed here. The DSUR, the submission is yearly, and the day when you need to submit the report is 60 days. Say for example, 31st of December is the DLP. You need to submit the report somewhere around 1st of March. Whereas PSUR, it depends on the frequency or where you are located, or what is the submission cycle or the reporting cycle you are in. It is more of a older report, which we will see, and it has got a slight distinction when it comes to the PBRER. So PSUR is something that is submitted at the 6-monthly interval for the first 2 years, of course, and after the authorization is granted. Then yearly after the 2 years, and 3 yearly from then onwards. Now a slight difference being, the PBRER, it is 6 monthly for the first 2 years and yearly from then onwards. The time that is allowed to prepare and submit the PSUR is 60 days, whereas in case of PEBRER, since it's a very comprehensive and a modular approach document, there is a span of 70 days which is given. This is for the annual review period, whereas for the multiple year review period, that could be the case, which can fall from the PSUR. There can be instance where the regulatory authority will ask for a 3-yearly PBRER, and they will say, please do not submit PSUR or the format in PSUR, present it in PBRER. So that's when the 90 days comes into picture. There are other scenarios as well, but I would not go into those details at this moment in time. PADER, on the other hand, more of a US specific, submitted at the authorization in the US market. Again, quarterly for the first 3 years, then annually till the approval of the product is withdrawn or it is updated. Now, this payer, it has got a peculiarity as well. As we will go ahead, we will see, but it's just worth mentioning here that in case in case there is a payer in place, and if the PSUR cycle or the submission cycle is coinciding with the payer cycle, then the US authority is kind enough to accept the payers, the PBRER or the PSUR as well. So when it comes to the submission timelines, 30 days for a quarterly, it means the three monthly payer, whereas the 60 days for the annual payer. That's the submission timeline. All right. When we look at DSUR versus PVRER, and why was the need? Firstly, people will start asking me, Vikit, what was the need? Why PSUR was good enough? What was the need to have a new format that is PBRER? So the PBRER mainly and the DSUR, they have the difference of a modular approach. When I say a modular approach, it is more to do with one section overlapping with other of the other report. So we will see how it looks like. So if you see a comprehensive section of the DSUR, which consists of the 20 sections, and if you see, it is divided into 4 parts. This is how I used to look at. Firstly, the admin, I'm sorry, the admin sections, as I call them. Then is the brief on case presentation, then followed by the analysis, and then the discussion. So if you see this particular report or this format, this is more of a modular approach, and this is very organized approach as well. This was not the case when it came to ASR. ASR was more of a summary report, and it had its own limitations. But when it comes to the DSUR, it is more comprehensive, gels well with all the other parts, and gels well with the other reports as well. So you know, again, there was US IND annual report as well, which was more of a progress report of a clinical program and used to include SAEs and AEs, and even the studies that led to withdrawal, even AEs that led to withdrawal, I'm sorry, and even the expedited safety report. And IND report, it only used to cover the US based clinical studies, whereas in DSUR that's not the case. It is comprehensive and it is modular. PBRER, the new format or the new PSUR, the revived form, and it is still even after 5 years, it is still being worked upon. There are discussions going on, there are updates, but this is the main skeleton. Again, just like its brother DSUR, it is the same approach: introduction, the brief on what is the data which is presented, the analysis, and then followed by the discussion. And if we say the discussion is very broad. It is very broad in terms of the signal and the risk, what is the evaluation, and it gives us a more of an integrated approach. So that's the main difference when we talk about the DSUR and the PBRER, the new PSUR, as we all say. With that said, again the question looms again. PSUR, it was old, and why did it give way to PBRER? So the answer is more to give a way or a synchronization with the DSUR and with the clinical trial report, or the clinical trial safety report, to be very precise. So may I ask to be on mute, please? Thank you. All right. So PSUR, when we talk about the old approach, it concerned more of a, to be honest, I used to look at it as a data dump. It was not giving me any sort of clear picture, and it was not giving. This is obviously it's my personal opinion, which I'm sharing with you. But let's look at it very briefly. PSUR, ICH E2C R1 guidelines, and PBRER, both EU guidelines. ICH E2C R2. The guideline was volume 9A, whereas this is GBP module 7. The data assessment or the scope was the interval, the reporting period data which was assessed, whereas the PBRER is again interval data which is incorporated, but the context or the analysis or the discussion, it is more to do with a cumulative perspective. So when I have to say cumulative perspective, what was the reference or what was the safety concern in the earlier review periods and how it has progressed? Is there a new safety finding? What is the risk balance, risk and benefit ratio or the balance that is being staged in this particular review period? PSUR, line listing of the data that used to get appended, but over here no line listing, but at the same time it is not scraped off. We look at it very deeply when it comes to line listing, because that forms the primary source. As I said, in the PSURs it used to include only narratives, whereas the PBRER always included summaries. Mitra, may I request to mute all, please? Thank you. So when it comes to PSUR, there was no assessment on benefit, whereas in PBRER it is more to do towards the benefit evaluation as well. When I say benefit evaluation, it predominantly is in section 18.1. It talks about what is the need of the alternative therapy, how this drug is doing well, is there a need of any other approach as well, what are the available methods that are still available. All those items are discussed in the benefit evaluation. PSUR, again, the last point includes the summary of the risk benefit analysis if they were done separately, whereas in the PBRER we talk about, or rather we try to explore and to see how to do the risk benefit evaluation in the report itself. So predominantly we talk about what was the case presentation, how many cases were there, what was the summary, how it was discussed, and how do we interpret it, and what do we infer. So that's how it is in the PBRER and PSUR. The two additional points for PBRER is the modular approach, which we talked about earlier on, and of course there are no requirement when it comes to summary bridging or the addendum reports. So this summary bridging or the addendum reports, these are mainly for the licensing renewal or new country registration, new indication with the new indication registration in the existing country. So these are more of a gap fillers, as I used to call it. Summary bridging and the addendum report. To be honest, in real world, it does not have a very greater value when it compares to the core reports like PSUR and PBRER. So summary, benefit should always outweigh risks. As we move ahead, okay, we understood what is PSUR versus PBRER. Then what is the difference between the PADER and the PBRER? So again, there is a considerable difference, but as I said earlier on, if there is a PADER or the review periods are overlapping of an existing product and the previous PADER is already in place with the US government, the PBRER is allowed, as this is more comprehensive. When I say comprehensive, here are the key differences. Very wordy slide. I don't want to go through entirely, but I want to pick you, talk about some key points. Individual case narratives, uh, just like the PSUR, the older one, with fatal outcomes and event of special interest. When we say events of special interest, it is more to do with the risks. PBRER, on the other hand, it is more of an analysis of risk evaluation. Of course, there has to be a regulatory prescribing difference as well. 21 CFR 314.80, and it is for US FDA. On the other hand, this is more to do with PBRER is for the European Medicine Agency, and it is prepared according to the module 7. 5 sections, whereas over here it is 20 sections. Paper includes presentation of the serious unlisted events, something which was similar to the PSUR in section 6.3. And the regulatory updates, of course. Whereas in the PBRER, it is more to do towards more of an integrated approach, focused towards the risk-benefit assessment. A separate paper is to be submitted with each NDA approval for different indication or different formulations. So this is more to do, more talks about, it is more of an indication or a formulation specific, whereas PBRER is for all the formulation, and it's a single report that is being prepared. The frequency we discussed earlier on, I will not touch upon that. It's more to do with quarterly for first 3 years, followed by annually. And for newly approved PSURs, it is 6 months for the first 2 years, followed by annual. And of course, there are always exceptions. Quarterly and annual papers to be submitted in 30 and 60 calendar days, whereas this is 70 and 90 in case of annual or the multiple year PPR. So these are the salient features is what I wanted to discuss. And
Hello, Skit. Sorry to disturb you.
yeah,
Yeah, you told me just now you briefly explained Preprar for all formulations, right? Padder for single formulation.
I'm sorry,
In
could you
terms
please
of formulation, you gave one difference between Padder and Preprar. Can you explain the same thing once again?
Yeah, so what I mean to say is PBRER is more to do with the formulation or the indication specific report, whereas the PBRER is a single report which contains all the formulation, all the dosage forms, and all the indications. So it's a comprehensive molecule specific report. Does that answer your question?
Explained for Padder. So PEPR is a comprehensive document for a single drug. For which suppose it's a single drug. If used for n number of indications with different formulations, for entire thing we can mention the PEPR. What about the Padder? Padder means suppose drug A is there. If used for fever, if it is for cough, we need to produce 2 Padders for the same drug for 2 different indications. Am I right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
All right, thanks for this question. I like the curiosity. All right, as we move ahead, in the best interest of time, what are the typical sources that we look at when we prepare a aggregate report? First and foremost, what information that we have for a particular review period that forms the line listing, which includes the case distribution with respect to the safety concerns, be it be risk, be it be potential or identified, so on and so forth. It helps in analyzing the report. It helps in summarizing the data in a right form. What are the data that we are looking at? How to treat the data? All those items can be looked at once we review the line listing, and it is a very important part before we start to write the any sort of document or any sort of regulatory document. There is a kickoff meeting as well, which is in place, um, which talks about how will we treat some sort of data. Is there, aren't we biased on anything? So the idea is we don't have to be biased. We don't have to use words like only, which are more suggestive and tilts the balance towards benefit. We have to be comprehensive and fair. So for the same instance, for the same reason, we need to look at the line listing very carefully. The summary tabulation, it talks about more or less talks about the distribution of cases. How many non-serious, how many serious. It could be, and it is distributed SOC wise, it is system organ class wise for a particular area of interest. Published literatures, meta-analysis, and the literatures that are already published are always looked into it. There are rules behind it as well, what literatures we need to see, but it's a very vast topic. I won't go into it. The case reports, the published case reports needs to be excluded. That's the point I wanted to make here. Current RSI, and what is the current RSI, and what is the summary of changes in the particular RSI is what we will need for section 3. Worldwide marketing authorization status, where the drug is marketed, all those items go into DSUR as well as in PSVR, even in the paper. Changes to clinical study documentation. Was there any changes when it comes to the existing clinical study, more to do toward more specific towards the DSUR than the PBRER, but this information goes in. Safety findings from non-clinical studies, which is toxicology or the carcinogenicity related issues. Were there any that needs to be incorporated? Risk management plan. Are there any sort of safety info yet to be determined, and what are the measures is to be taken for these gaps? Is something that is talked into the risk management plan and forms a part of your PBRER as well, and even the other safety reports. CSR, clinical study reports for the completed clinical trials. What is the endpoint? How did it fare? And alongside, synopsis of ongoing and the completed clinical trial reports, predominantly section 10, if I'm not mistaken, of the PBRER. Other information, are there any regular inputs? Are there anything that has come from the regulatory authorities, and how do we want to treat the data? Is there a special instruction that has been given to us? All these items. So this holistically, there may be several other sources, and they are dependent on the type of document that you are writing. But this is just to give you a snapshot on how the typical sources would look. As we say, it's a continuous process, and managing ongoing assessment reports and responding to any regulatory authority questions comes over and above writing any sort of report. So this is the typical value chain and the activities, rather the value chain, I would say. Data gathering and review. First the line listing, the literature reviews, and all those items that is first reviewed. It gets peer reviewed as well. Then the medical writer compiles it, prepares the report, followed by the peer review, who does the fact checks or the assesses the correctness. Then it comes the medical review, where the doctors or the physician look at the report from a medical standpoint, and they look at if something is off, or they also look at the expectedness, they look at the seriousness, they look at the severity. All those items are to be looked at with a very greater details and from a medical judgment point of view. Any issues, the document can go back and forth, and which obviously requires the collaboration and the teamwork. There are processes in place, but I would not touch upon that too deep. But the but the main message over here is collaboration and teamwork is something that is of paramount importance and more of a soft skill. The negotiation, communication, how do we decide upon the timelines? These are the key aspects that one will learn through experience. All right, major roles. You would say, because all that is fine, but what am I going to do? When you say the value chain, what the medical writer does, he maintains the submission schedules when this document needs to be submitted, or say for example, in a typical world, a set of molecules are say from a therapeutic standpoint, a set of molecules is assigned to a medical writer. That is his responsibility when to initiate the activities of data gathering and review, and then take it up to the final compilation. So a lot of proactive and juggling which is required when it comes to maintaining the schedule. How do we want to, even from a personal front as well, I'm sharing it from my experience. You need to shuffle around your leaves, spend some hours in the office. There are days when you don't have any work. There are days when you can't even, you have to be in office for 16 odd hours. So this is how it goes, but it's a very exciting role of a medical writer, and it gives you a lot of exposure, lot of learning. Each and every day there is a new learning. So as we move forward, more to do with some to the preparatory work and the authoring. Then once a report comes back from the peer reviewer, you need to address the comments, and even when it comes from the medical reviewer, you need to address the comments, talk with them. Is there any issue? How can we do it more of a how do we submit a delivery or the report as a form of teamwork? So a medical writer can also be a peer reviewer for another medical writer. So that is a common practice. So some of the, or rather most of the company, they don't have a dedicated peer reviewer. Some do, whereas the others don't. It depends from the client requirement or even the workload or their processes. So peer reviewer, he does more of a fact check. He looks at the formatting. He looks at if something is off, something is missed. Mainly he fine tunes the report what medical writer has done. Medical safety physician, on the other hand, as I said earlier on, looks at more from the medical perspective, from the new safety concerns, literature review to suggest any strategy or any change in the strategy. Say, for example, if you need to present some information not in a form of table, but it would look more appealing and more meaningful in form of a graph, then why not? So these all flexibilities are possible when it comes to PBRER. This is unlike the PSVR based on my experiences. But there are several other items as well with a medical safety physician does. But all three individuals are separate entities when it comes to the roles for a particular report. But when it comes to managing ongoing assessment reports or any ad hoc inquiries, they all come together, form a team, and give the answers. So, in a nutshell, this role is a very exciting one, and it's a never-ending process. So, if you are looking at for a long-term career, if you are looking at the lateral progression as well as the upward progression, this is the place to be in. And it, as I said earlier, it continuously enhances your skill. It continuously enhances your knowledge as well, the outlook as well, the way to treat the data. How do we look at the data? How do we present the data? How do we manage a particular report? How do we look at the perspective of a regulatory authority? What are the other aspects as well when it comes to signal detection and other allied activities? So it opens up a huge sort of a gate when it comes to career progression for us as a life science grads or even physicians, pharmacists, nurses. So this is the place I would say is something if you want to learn and take your career to greater heights. So with that said, I just stop for some questions if there are any.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Viket. Thanks a lot for very enlightening and very useful presentation. We have some questions. We request everyone to write the questions on Windows. So, Dr. Vipra, keep everyone muted so that it is useful for everyone. So we have some questions, Dr. Viket.
I'm not sure how that window.
Dr. Viket, I'm just opening these questions. I'm reading out these questions to you. After completing this course with Cliniminds, will the candidates be directly for the aggregate report for every other company asks for an experience? So I'll answer this and Viket as well. The program will definitely equip you with the necessary skill set. So one of the important things any recruiter or any employer will see whether you have an ability to write these reports. So what this program would do basically to give you the necessary skill set, help you in writing these reports. So by the end of the program, at the end of the 14 weeks, you will be ready to write these reports. There is a very good sort of a structure program in place. There are very senior level trainers, including Dr. Viket as well, who will train you on actually writing these reports. We have a line listing mechanism. There are sample reports given to you. You will write those reports. They will be reviewed by the experts. So once you know the skill, it is likely that it will help you internally within your company as well. And when you apply outside and you clearly say that I have a good understanding, I can write these reports, I've been trained by Cliniminds, that will carry a lot of weight on your CV.
I think I would echo.
Yes,
I would echo.
Dr.
Yeah, I would echo Kamal over here. This course will sort of equip you and prepare you, but eventually the performance is in your hand, is what I would say.
Yeah. Dr. Viket, another question. Could you please focus more on the clinical scientist role as DSU report or IB? Which report is used for the clinical trials in early development studies? Also phase 1-3 studies. Priya, thank you, Priya, for your question. This is fairly comprehensive question. Actually, this may require another full session on addressing this, but yeah, that we are going to address this during the program. There is an entire session on this particular aspect what you have raised. Swati asks, will you provide any certificate? Yes, Swati, we do provide a certificate program in aggregate report writing. This is provided at the end. Will there be any live exposure on database? Yes, absolutely, Neha. We have a database, safety database. So you will be given an access to the safety database for the line listings. So you'll be able to practice. Yes, there'll be a access to safety database as well. Could you please let us know how to submission after the final report is done? Dr. Viket, for you. How the submission is done after final report is done?
Well, submission, this is more of a very broad term, and typically in the sponsor does the submission via the gateway. So there is an electronic submission. Some of them, some of the regulatory authorities also require the paper submission, but this is now becoming rare. But by and large, it comes to the dedicated gateway of the regulatory authority, and it is submitted electronically. If that answers your question.
Right, Dr. Viket, another question is RSI for DSR. When a new drug is launched, how does it have ADRs? Manohar, that's a very basic question. And if you are from a pharmacovigilance domain, I'm sure you know how the ADRs are collected. If you're already working in pharmacovigilance domain, is that right? When a new
Yes,
drug is
I
launched,
think
Viket, yeah, how does you have
yeah,
ADRs? So yes, there is a mechanism for collection of ADRs when you launch a new drug. But
yeah.
if you are a PV professional, then that's a very basic question actually. And
Yes, I think IB, the investigator brochure, is used as the reference safety information for a DSUR. So it will contain all the information, predominantly the adverse event or even the class effect of that particular drug that can be seen as the ADR based on this all the parameters. So if the causality is implied, then it is the reaction, else it is an event. So to answer your question,
some
IB
questions
is
are still not clear. But format of ECTD module be followed for submission. Pavan, a little more clarification on your question. Kavita, we use the Safety Easy. Your question is which database is used? We use Safety Easy is pretty much almost like Aris Global or the Argus. It's same workflows, everything pretty similar as that. It's on cloud that will be used for the purpose of training. What I have a question from Dr. Nitin here to organize. I have a ICSR medical review experience only. So can you guide whether pharma companies or other companies hire in aggregate support? Yes, if you have a ICSR medical review, you need to acquire this skill set of aggregate report writing. And as a medical reviewer, Dr. Nitin, you will then benefit a lot if you know the aggregate report writing. And
agreed.
companies definitely will consider you in for those positions. What is the mode of the course? Can the course be done online? Yes, Shakala Kulkarni. And yes, the program is available through two modes. We have a self-learning online mode, and then there is a e-learning mode. In the e-learning mode, something like this, what Dr. Vikita has done today, there'll be 14 odd sessions like this, but you will have the access to safety database. Then for example, the pebrer is taught to you. Then the trainer will take you through the pebrer, but then also will give you the case to write the entire pebrer sort of at your end. So you will learn practically in e-learning, but online is a self-learning mode. So we have both modes available. uh, uh, if New question here, if any safety issue identified, who will be updated first, PAID or RMP signal? How they are interlinked, Dr. Vikit?
So firstly, the RMP is updated first to answer your question. The risk management plan gets updated based on the signal detection activities that eventually flows into your DSUR as well as in the PBRER. So aggregate reports by and large are the periodic assessment or are the assessment of a periodicity for a particular drug. So if that answers your question.
Manish asks, what standard is used to evaluate disclosure risk?
Disclosure risk. I'm sorry, I'm not aware of this, but I'll get back to you.
Thanks, Manish. We will respond back on this to you. Uh, then we have some more.
Is this the known? I don't want to assume. Let me get back to you.
Okay, there was another question. Want to know which ECTD module format to be used for the different reports for respective authorities? Viket, for you.
Well, it is not the eCTD module, but the safety report form a part of the eCTD module, the submission dossier, to say. But when it comes to how to write those, what are the guidelines that needs to be followed? E2F is the guideline for the DSUR that goes in.
Okay, is a similar question. Is the entire document layout based on CTD module?
No, there are separate guidelines, and a particular document forms as a part of the CTD. A CTD is a complete dossier when it goes for an MAA submission.
Okay, so thanks, Dr. Viket. Another Priya is asking, DSA information takes information from IB as its pre-approval CT PADER in US and PEBRAR in EU, and sequences DSUR, PSUR, PEBRAR. Is that right?
The sequence first the DSUR, that's for sure, followed by the PADER if it is US, and then PBRER.
If Europe.
Yeah, even in US they accept
Yeah.
PBRER.
Yeah. How the aggregate reports are submitted to the authority in PDF or Word document?
There are different forms. Some accept the RTF form as well. Some accept PDF, but it has to be electronically and digitally signed. That's the basic requirement. They do have the mechanisms in place. The RA authorities or the regulatory authority, the RA guys, they do this submission. So it is more to do with their scope.
Thank you, friend. Thank you a lot. And you can send us some more questions. You already have Cliniminds email ID. They'll be responded. We are starting this batch on 17th of this month. This is going to be the e-learning option. Similarly, what we have done today, interactive sessions with the trainers. You'll be trained by 2 to 3 different trainers who will take your different programs. You will have access to the safety database. You'll be trained on 9 listing. You'll be trained on all writing 4 major reports basically, and we'll also be covering the aspects of signal management and the risk management as well as a part of the program. So shortly our team will contact you with all the program information, and at this stage we are offering a special due to the corona issues. We are offering the fee rebate as well, so we'll be sending you the information along with the program details. Tushan has a question, Viket. Please take the last question. Is literature case processing experience concept for the medical right? Yeah. Is literature, Dr. Shah, is literature case processing experience counted for the medical writer? Yes, in a sense, Dr. Tushan, the literature case processing is important. But once you know the aggregate report writing well, you will be able to actually consider for those positions in the medical. But here, literature case processing is good knowledge, good skill set. But aggregate report writing is an additional skill set you will require for the medical writer job. Thank you, Dr. Viket. Thanks for the very inspiring session today. And we will, request you for more sessions in future. Thanks a lot. Thank you, everyone, for your time today.
Thanks, Kamal, and appreciate
Please, yeah,
Bye-bye.
yes, please. Yes, someone wants to say.
Kamal, Pramod here. I want to ask question regarding those are working persons currently. Should I get time to complete this certification program? Is it on weekend?
Yeah, Pramod, we conduct these classes only on weekend, Sunday, so that every working professional can attend these sessions.
And can you share all the details regarding our fee structure, program
we
duration?
Would do that shortly.
Is it?
I'm assuming
Okay,
we have your email ID, Pramod. So we will shortly send you
all
the information. Yeah. Thank you, Pramod.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Kamal.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right, Kamal, if there are no other questions.
Thank you, Dr. Viket. Thank you so much, sir, for your time today. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Appreciate that. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.